Hi everyone, Joellen here, and welcome to Washed in Watercolor. Well, it's November in New England, the days are shorter, the temperature cooler, and winter is on its way. The thought of snow is always picturesque in November, but come January, it's not as appealing. With that, I thought it would be fun to paint this red barn in the snow, and I may just add a Christmas wreath. I begin with a basic drawing, keeping in mind two-point perspective. It's important to first establish a level horizon line. I then draw the vertical lines of the main structure. The barn is shown in two-point perspective, so each side will have a vanishing point on the right and the left. I establish the basic cube shape and then break the form down from there. In perspective, to find the middle of the roof, I connect corner to corner. Where the lines cross will be the center. In the photo reference there is a window, but I think a wreath will be a nice touch. Using the same perspective vanishing points, I draw the connecting structure. I add the roof and then the windows. I draw the additional structures on the left. Even though drawing architecture can be tedious, having an accurate base is so important. There are some trees in the background. Using a dotted line, I ghost them in. Once I'm happy with my drawing, I mask out the roof. This helps to free up my hand when I paint the background. I like to mask with a tinted fluid, so it's easy for me to see. Working wet into wet is one of my favorite techniques. I wet the background and drop in my sky colors. The sky is very light, so it's important to add a lot of water to my paints. I use touches of lemon yellow, Winsor orange, and Winsor blue. I'll add a link in the description to my short video describing the colors on my palette. Winsor blue is definitely a bully, and the color can easily overtake the painting. A little goes a long way. I pick up some burnt sienna and drop it into the wet paint. This will create the soft and distant trees. When working wet into wet, be sure to have less water on your brush to avoid the dreaded blossoms. Actually, I find blossoms and blooms to be quite lovely in the right place. Add touches of Perylene green to the background trees. It's important to leave peeky holes for a more realistic look. I pick up some sepia and using my finest brush, I paint the distant tree limbs and branches. With everything dry, I'll start to work on the foreground snow. I'll wet it first and drop in some ultramarine blue along with touches of Quinacridone magenta and Winsor blue. I want to keep my colors nice and light. Time is always of the essence when I'm working wet into wet washes. Once everything is dry, I soften the background edge using a flat brush. It's good to have crisp, sharp edges on my main subject because they support the focal point. I find having them in the background to be a distraction. I add touches of Winsor blue, yellow ochre, and Perylene green to the midground. To this I work in dark touches of burnt sienna and sepia. Finally, it's time to paint the structures. I pick up some sepia and drop it into the back area, and I add touches of Winsor red at the bottom and let the two just mix together. Using sepia, I add a few lines to the barn and windows to delineate the structure. I love putting in some of these dark touches. I paint the front face of the barn using Winsor red. Once fully painted, I soften the bottom with a damp, clean brush. While the red paint is still wet or damp, I'll add touches of sepia to get the grain of the wood. With a damp, clean brush, I'll also lift off a little bit of the paint. Mixing Perylene maroon and green to the red, I paint the shadowed side of the barn. I really want to make sure that this side is darker. Using the same mixture, I'll paint in the other structure on the left. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna are one of my favorite color combinations. They're perfect for the right side of the barn. I really love the softness of watercolor and what happens when you let the water move the paint. I want to keep my detailed work to the main subject. Just to brighten up the barn, I'm adding another coat of red, and I'm adding darker touches to the windows. This is my main subject, so having it a little brighter is good. Again, I'll come through with a clean damp brush and pick up little bits of wood. Adding dark touches under the roof will really help to finish it off. Finally, it's time to take off the masking. Once I take off the masking, I want to use a soft, damp brush to clean up edges. Using a combination of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, I'll add small little details to the snow-covered roofs. The soft green paint of the wreath adds a nice contrast to the red barn. I'm picking through things by adding some darker values. I'm trying to strengthen some of my lines. Using Sepia, I add in the fence posts and rails. Keeping with the same brush and color, I add in some of the smaller trees in the foreground. To give the barn a bit more sparkle, I use my X-Acto knife to give it some texture. I don't always use this technique since it can damage the paper. You want to do this as a final step in your painting. To help my channel grow, please remember to like and subscribe. I would like to introduce today's assistant. She was so helpful in the recording of today's video. She's the best. Well, here it is, a red barn in the snow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.